Welcome to Know What I Mean. My name's Oscar.
My name's George, and I think this is actually my favorite episode so far. It got into some areas that I really care about and some things that I think can be quite hard to explain sometimes, and but things that I really do believe in. So I hope you guys enjoy this and really give it the time to listen and to enjoy and kind of play with these ideas.
Yeah, no, it's I would agree. I think during the recording of this there were a number of times when I was just like, shit, this is the best one. I think this is the best one, and that means something at this point because I think I don't know how many, we're like 25 in or something like that. Yeah, it just felt very right, this conversation, and it was very exciting as well. So yeah, really hope you enjoy.
Awesome. Let's get into it.
The quote for this week is, "Hatred can never cease through hatred in this world. Through love alone they cease. This is an eternal law." So this is a quote from the Buddha, supposedly, and it's in the Dhammapada, which is the earliest Buddhist text. It's around 2,000 years old. It was written down about 500 years after the Buddha's death. So this is the closest we get to the Buddha. And why have I picked this quote? It's one of those ones, I'm sure everyone can relate. There are certain sayings or quotes that seem to just pop up at different times, but they're particularly lodged in there and they seem to pop up in different situations. And in the last year, this one's done that. It's sort of just bubbled up to the surface at different points. And I think actually, I hope this isn't kind of too abstracted, but something that really comes to mind in relation to it and what it often pops up with is this idea that states or intention, it has a quality in which it breeds similar states. Mm-hmm. So essentially this quote, is saying that hatred breeds hatred. Mm-hmm. It may seem like acting from a hateful or aggressive stance, like the intention is to stop something, but actually by flooding the situation with more of that energy, it actually breeds more of the same. And only its complete counter, which is love or inclusion, can ultimately deal with that initial hatred. And yeah, I find that very interesting, thinking about how both in a positive and negative sense, things are like for like. They actually breed more of the same. Positive habits breed more positive habits, negative habits breed more negative habits, and hatred breeds more hatred, or and one thing to mention with this is, in a Buddhist context, hatred's often used as a bit of a blanket term for the many different forms in which hatred actually comes, which is from physical violence, like at its most extreme, to like minor irritation at another end. It's essentially forms of saying, this is a wrong experience. This experience just simply should not be happening. And there is some sort of resistance to that experience. I'm interested in talking about, because I feel like this quote it does need explaining, definitely. And I'm glad that we're actually talking about it, because if I was to leave it at that, like any form of resistance breeds more resistance, then that in itself is quite a controversial statement. But I'm interested to explore it. But I'm also interested to hear what you thought of it.
So yeah, that's one of the first things I thought about it, of how, things beget more of the same thing. And I actually thought of it as kind of, this thing it's almost like mathematical. Like it's a very simple thing, and it seems to be a governing law of the universe. And it's very easy though to get caught up in the current situation that you're in, where you're feeling, hatred or just dislike of someone or something. And, your reaction is, you think logically, okay, I need to, show that I don't support this by attacking this person. Like, that is me doing good, is to attack someone who is doing something bad. And that is, that fits in so much to our society and our kind of ideas of punishment and what's right and what's wrong. And if you do something that's bad, you should be punished. But I guess I think this idea of punishment and attacking bad people and making bad people suffer is something that's somewhat a remnant of our biology, but also a big part of it is Christianity and a lot of religions that have a real emphasis on punishment of sinners. And I think this is actually one of the largest areas at the moment where we have a huge difference between what is socially accepted as true versus what is actually true. It's a huge, huge area where there's a big difference, and it really does matter. I think there's a lot of implications for the justice system, for example. And yeah, I think a lot of this whole thing comes from the idea of free will and lack of free will. And I know this may seem like a bit of a departure from this quote, but the idea of hatred and how hatred arises is, it comes from the idea that this person is bad, they have done bad things, and that they are, responsible for their bad behavior. And if you believe in free will, then you can see, okay, that makes sense. This person chose to commit a crime, so they should be punished. But if you don't believe in free will, or if you just think, this person has had all of these life experiences, they've had all of their genetics, their predisposition to maybe be more aggressive than other people, or whatever it is based on their childhood trauma. If you sum up all of these things, you can see why someone might have committed a crime. They might have stolen something or committed a violent crime, because you can see all of the things leading up to it. And that is something that helps you see through this hatred and see that actually love and compassion is really the correct response to someone who is doing something horrible. This person has ended up in a situation where they felt like the best thing to do is to murder someone or to steal something. And the fact that this person has ended up in that situation deserves compassion rather than hatred of that person. And yeah, I know I've piled on a lot of stuff there, but I think it's a really important area and something that I've thought about a lot and care about a lot. And I would just say, if you're listening to this and some of these ideas seem kind of weird or just so counter to what you're used to, I would say really try and listen to them and just be open to them. Just as a thought experiment, try and kind of entertain the things we're saying, because a lot of the things that I've said already and that I'm going to say might seem very counter to your intuitions about how you should behave in certain situations. So yeah, I would say just give it time and kind of entertain what we're saying and see what you think.
Nice disclaimer.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it is important to say that, because it you get into territory here where it can almost sound like there's a justification of really immoral things. And if it gets into that territory, then essentially it ends up quite triggering. Like, it can end up quite triggering, because if it hits on something that you feel very identified with, then that will happen.
Mm.
Something when you were talking, I can't believe we're going into free will. We've kind of avoided this for quite a long time. But anyway, it's happening a bit here. I think it is, it's a really good point, in that compassion, it's not like you choose compassion necessarily. Compassion is a response to seeing suffering clearly. And so just this is just an example, because it was one that popped into my mind when you were talking of I watched I think it was a series recently about the Unabomber. So this guy who would post bombs to universities and like nail bombs and horrible things, you know, that would just be killing completely innocent people. There was this manhunt for this guy for years, and the FBI just couldn't, because he was so intelligent, they couldn't get hold of him. This whole series runs through. So, you know, you read a newspaper thing about that someone's sent a bomb to a university and killed someone completely unrelated to crime, anything like that. They're just totally innocent person. You're going to read that and you're going to hate the person that's done it. And part of that is just that we have no idea why. No one had any idea why it was happening. And there was and you didn't know who it was because they weren't catching the person. So there was no context as to why that was happening. And what I found during this series, and why I'd recommend watching it partly, is it comes into this area of, if you know someone's conditioning, if you really know their story as this program runs through, you really see what happened to this man who they eventually catch and why he's doing what he's doing. And it fills him out as a human being. You might not completely drop your hatred, but you will end up feeling sympathy and compassion towards this person that's done horrific things. Because the more that someone is filled out and the more wisdom there is, the more you can really see what's going on. You inevitably feel a level of compassion, even for the most atrocious things, because it makes sense on a certain level. And hatred, I don't want to say this outright, but I think so much of it is seeing a limited view of someone or a situation. You don't have the full story. You know, it's like if you're on the phone to some customer service, you're trying to get hold of your phone company, no one's picking up, or you're getting passed from person to person. You start feeling really pissed off. That's because it's so annoying to not know what's going on, and you just don't know why it's happening, and you don't have any context. If you were to have the backstory, if you would be able to see the innards of that company and how dysfunctional it is, and how the management's not particularly very good necessarily, how the people you're speaking to are having maybe a bad day, if you were to see that, you would be patient, and there would be compassion there, 100%. But it's that there's that lack of, you can't see what's going on, and that there's not that aspect of wisdom or seeing things clearly in there, that hatred really arises, that fear response comes up, and that resistance really comes up. That
made me think of, like, imagine your friend, you know, tells you a story about someone they got into an argument with, right? You know, they're going to come and they're going to tell you, and you're going to be, oh, that guy sounds like a dick. Like, what was he doing? But you know that same person they got an altercation with is going to go and tell their friends about it. And their friends, you know, hearing their friends' side of the story, are going to be like, oh, that other guy sounds like a dick. You just take the side that you've got most information with, because you can empathize with it, because both people probably think they're right. You know, they might realize a little bit that, you know, maybe they were being a bit over the top or whatever. You know, some people might say, actually, I was being a dick. But in general, the side that you know the most from is the side that you're going to empathize with. And that can just expand infinitely. Like, if you start to realize that the reason that everyone has their reasons for something they did. Even, I mean, that's the thing. It's very strange. It feels almost inhuman to be, I guess, not justifying, but like to be trying to understand other people from that position. Like it feels like, no, you should be angry at that person and you should hate that person. And that definitely is the natural reaction. It's definitely natural. And it's not like you're a bad person for feeling hatred or anger towards someone, but it's just interesting to notice how the more that you know of the story, the more that you're going to empathize with that particular protagonist. And as a thought experiment, you can kind of do that for the whole world. Like you can think like, what if I knew the story behind what if I knew every person's story, every struggle, every reason? You may not agree with what they've done, but you could understand what they've done and understand why they've done it. And that doesn't mean that you sanction it, but it would mean that at least it would be understood rather than this unknown of just, why would this person do something like that? And I think that is what really leads to the feeling of hatred, just the not understanding, because you project yourself onto this person. You know, that's how when we have theory of mind, which is like basically just understanding what another person is thinking, we try to imagine them and their psyche, but essentially what we're doing is projecting ourselves onto them, how we would behave in that situation. We might make a few little modifications for, you know, maybe this person's, I don't know, less educated, or maybe they have, you know, maybe they're a different gender, so we might project ideas about what they might feel if they were that gender. But essentially, we're projecting ourselves and our morals onto all these people. And we say, with my morals and my beliefs, I don't know why someone or how someone could do something so horrible. But the crazy thing is that there is an answer to that question of how and why they would do that thing. That's not an unknown. To them, it's not. To them, it's not unknown. To them, there is a clear path of their life and the choices they've made, the things that have happened to them that have led, that at least explain those actions. And I think that is what dissolves the hatred and makes it easier to see it in a more compassionate way.
Yeah, I really want to. Yeah, this is such an interesting conversation. It's one I think about a lot. It is around this, you know, like where's the line, like what, and you know, how does this actually work pragmatically? Like, how does this actually function? You know, because I think a lot of people listening, and I think the common idea is that you take the perspective of that you have compassion for people who do bad things, and then you just let them do bad things, or you justify them doing bad things. Then you know, whereas if there's no free will, if everyone's actions make sense, then everyone's actions are justified. Then, you know, just free all the prisoners, let everyone be horrible to one another. Like it's all makes sense with their conditioning, whatever. And I think what's and this is the point that I want to bring in my pre-thought through argument in relation to this, which is that, so yeah, this idea, so we should just accept everything even if it's wrong. That's the kind of idea that people might have from, you know, only hatred never ceases by hatred, only love. You know, it's just, you just love them and accept them and that's it. And I just say, like, every single person will have an experience of having said no, having said that is unacceptable, without hatred being there. And it's very interesting to notice what those moments are actually like. In my life, they are some of the strongest and most empowered moments that I've ever felt. has been when I've seen something that is not right, when I've seen that someone's doing something that's unacceptable, and I've decided very often just in the moment. It's not like a pre-thought thing, but it's just like, this is an unacceptable thing. No hatred there, but just a complete clarity of that neither this person or myself or anyone else will benefit from that action being carried through.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't happen. And there can be so much love there, even in moments like that. I think it is quite amazing. I'm sure anyone listening will have examples of that. Someone on the bus has done something, or you've, even like in someone that you know very well, or whatever it might be, and someone's done something unacceptable, and you've just got this rise in you of just like, this isn't right, and you've done something about it. And it's also very interesting to notice in those moments how the other person reacts, because I can almost guarantee that their reaction will be far better when the energy that's brought with it is just simply this shouldn't happen, as opposed to just this blast of hatred, because that hatred breeds hatred. So you're going to get a response. It's like, and the other thing to emphasize with this is it's not a particularly rational process. It's almost like you are possessed to take action, and the action is taken. It's quite selfless. It just feels important what you're doing. It's not like, oh, I shouldn't be angry, I'm not going to be angry. The anger just isn't there, and you just take action. And I also think of this in relation to, a parent will be constantly telling their child to not do something, even telling their child off, and the love is consistent and it remains there throughout that. So I think, like, basically, like, even though it's a high ideal to live your life in this way, only really an enlightened person will have the capacity to be able to just live in love basically all the time. So it's a high ideal, but what I want to emphasize with what I've just said is just that it's completely possible to say that things are unjust within society, that they need to change, that someone needs to stop doing something, and to have those conversations with love. That is completely possible. It's not binary. It's not like one or the other. You either have hatred and then you stop things, or love and you accept everything and nothing changes, so.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to clarify that love is not submission. It doesn't mean that you're just like, oh yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. It can sometimes require force. Actually, there was an example of a video that I saw on like an underground train, and there was a guy there who was drunk and was being, very verbally abusive and aggressive to, I think, one or two of the people who were there, and just really very unpleasant. And there was a guy there who clearly knew jiu-jitsu and just kind of came up, put their arm around his neck, so kind of a choke, but more to control him, and just kind of took him down to the ground and just stopped him from causing any more trouble. And he kind of ended up fairly quickly releasing him and kind of de-escalating the situation. But that was something that was done through love. If you see someone like that, you could definitely make the argument that you could just punch that person in the face, or someone could just be passive and not get involved. But really, I think the ideal is to say, okay, I need to use force to stop this person because this is unacceptable, but I'm not going to use excessive force on this person. I'm not going to try and hurt them more than is necessary. I'm just going to do this and restrain them, and then de-escalate the situation. Yeah, I think it's really important to clarify that. There's actually a quote from Martin Luther King, because I've been researching and listening to him quite a bit this week, because he was a pacifist and really championed the idea of loving thy enemy. And he has a quote which says, "Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic." And, you know, I just thought that was such a beautiful quote, to say that this is not about rolling over in submission to evil and people doing bad things. This is about using your power, but to do it in a compassionate way, and to do it with the minimal amount of force, but sometimes there would be force required.
Yeah, it's so, like, I love that I think that we've been able to clarify the middle way with this, and that, you know, it's not, you don't have to be in extreme of either camp of doing nothing or acting from hatred. It's totally possible to take action without hatred being present. That's something for me that's just so I mean, it's such an ideal, you know. It's such a, I think, like, I'm so impressed when I meet people that are really able to state their needs, but not in a way that is aggressive or from clear, like, just being blinded by various different forms of hatred, you know, of like irritation and all of these kind of things, like, oh, you know, this is what I want, and this is not right, and you know, like, coming from that place. And then you meet people who are so grounded and confident in stating what is needed, but clearly in a space of compassion and understanding, having the ability to understand people fully and be open to people, and at the same time as stating their needs or other people's needs. You know, it's just like that is such an incredible skill, you know. And I'm sure it's one that some people are maybe born with slightly more than others, but I'm sure it's something that comes from lots of experience of seeing how just acting from this place of serious resistance all the time doesn't even work. It's not that it's immoral, wrong, you know, that you shouldn't be like that. As this quote is saying, it actually doesn't work. It fans the flame. You can talk about karma in relation to this in Buddhism, and karma kind of gets used for all sorts of different things, but essentially it's about that every action is planting seeds, and every action is infused with what your intention is, your thoughts about that thing, everything that comes behind an action. That is what leads to how it grows, whether it's positive or negative. That's why in Buddhism, intention is so important, is that our influence is so great. The ripple effect of any single action that we have is so great in ways that we can't even conceive of. It's that subtle. So even if there are actions that are coming from hatred that seem to have the effect that you want, from this line of thinking, then the seeds that are being planted, even though right now it seems as if, okay, well, this person's, you know, I've got what I want in this situation, it does actually still breed more of the same, which comes up and sprouts up in all sorts of different ways. And I suppose, you know, it's like, this is a theory. You can believe, you know, I believe that our actions have the subtle consequences of our actions. I believe that is true, but, you know, some people might think it's a little bit more gross, you know, that it's a little bit more like, that we don't have that much influence, you know, so that there will be difference in that. But from this line of thinking, then even those actions from hatred that seem to work ultimately don't. Ultimately, it still breeds more of the same.
I was thinking about exactly the same thing. Imagine you hate someone based on their political beliefs, whatever it is. Think of a particular political ideology or whatever, something that you hate, and, you know, you could feel completely justified in hating on that person and telling them what a terrible person they are, and trying to signal to others how bad this person is, how dangerous their beliefs are. And from one way of looking at it, that's, makes perfect sense. It seems very justified. But if you just think, what do you actually want? Do you want less of this ideology in the world? Because if that's what you want, then attacking people with that ideology is not the best way to do it. It's just not. You can think about that individual person. Perhaps you see that this person would hate you, so you feel like, well, I should hate them. But perhaps if you could go through the thing of trying to understand them and try and see where you have ideas that are aligned and see how you can kind of persuade them or kind of reason with them by actually listening to them to show them why that their ideas are wrong and can be dangerous, rather than just shouting them down, because that makes people calcify and harden their beliefs. When someone challenges something, the vast majority of people, their initial reaction is to strengthen that thing and defend that thing. And it will actually make someone who has fairly moderate beliefs become more extreme if they're criticized, because they see those ideas and they want to protect them, and they see people attacking them, and it's just going to keep on going like that. That's one aspect of it. But even just think about the third party, the person who may be watching that interaction, the person who may be seeing you two fighting and they're on the fence trying to work out which side is right. If you're on the side where you're shouting and being aggressive towards this person and they're being aggressive towards you, it's kind of a toss-up where they're going to go. But if you're clearly being loving and understanding and reasonable, then you're much more likely to convert people to your side. So much of when you have two people discussing, say you've got an audience, can't remember who, but I remember seeing an audience of two people. I think it might have been like some atheist, religious debate or something like that. And I was thinking, like, what's the point of this? Because they're never going to change each other's minds. There's not going to be one is going to go and be like, you know what? I don't believe in God anymore. Or the atheist suddenly starts believing in God. But those arguments are not for those two people. It's for the benefit of everyone around, because they can see how these two people with opposing views are interacting. And then they, without their ego being involved, they can just watch and they can decide, which side that they resonate with most. So yeah, I just wanted to add that to clarify what you were saying about how it doesn't actually work. Like, if you really do want to challenge a harmful ideology, just attacking it head on aggressively is just not effective. And it's a shame to put your energy into that aggression when you may even be making the situation worse. Yeah.
And that's I think out of anything that we've said is the most controversial point, is the most difficult point, I think, for I had a conversation with someone recently which went into politics, and it immediately kind of got this tinge of just like, but don't you see how disgusting that behavior is, and how wrong it is? It's like, of course I see that. It's like, it's very, very obvious how, flawed it is as a way of thinking, and how damaging it is. But the question is, and again, it is like a case of, the justice system, as we were talking about at the beginning. Do you want revenge, or do you want people to change? Because they're different things. And it's not in a way saying, if you feel angry at people, that, oh, you're doing, that's terrible of you. Like, I'm sitting here and like looking at all the people who are pissed off at each other and like, I'm better than you, like, what? It's nothing to do with that. It's saying, what is actually effective here? What's going to help the situation? And very often what's effective is not what what the immediate response is to that thing, or even what feels like the justified response to that thing. They're very different things. And I think both me and you just believe this so fully.
Yeah.
But it's such a hard one, isn't it? Because you do have, particularly in the area of politics and things, which I kind of swore to myself that I wouldn't get into in this episode. But anyway, here we are. Other people's beliefs can be extremely scary and damaging. There is absolutely no doubt about that. If you've got like really, far on either end, to be fair, but like far right beliefs, then it's like, that's some really scary ideas that people are having and have gone very wrong in the past. A lot of people have died based on beliefs like that. So the response is like, fuck, okay, shit, we need to shut this down now. We need to fight this now. We need to squash this now. And then it's important to look, because there's so much at stake, because now, particularly now, we have got these ideologies really flaring up. There is so much at stake. It cannot be a case of just going with the emotions on this one, because look into it. Like it just doesn't work, as you've already said, the psychology of it. If you shout at people's faces and tell them that their views are immoral, Brexit this, like, does that work? No, it polarizes. Of course it doesn't work. Everyone can see it doesn't work. Does it feel good to say that? Sure. Yeah, it feels good to tell someone that they're wrong and to feel very convinced that that's the case. Does it work? No. Not even does it not work. It really exacerbates the situation. And there's far too much at stake right now for us to actually do that. So we need to really work out what actually works. And there, hatred never ceases by hatred. Through love alone they cease. I believe that that's true, and people that I admire believe that that's true, and that's what I'm running with on this, and I'm interested in how that manifests.
Wow, that is definitely the best end to a podcast we've ever had, I think.
Man, I so love this one. This has been such a good
this
one.
was awesome, man. It's like a lot of, like we were saying, there's a lot of things that people might initially have like a bad reaction to, but it's something that we both have thought about a lot, that we both really believe. And I think I'd love to have feedback on this. Like, if you've listened to this podcast and just whatever you think, if you agreed with it or disagreed with it or whatever, we'd love to hear what you think. You can send us a DM on Instagram, knowwhatimean.podcast. And we've got a link to the email address down in the description as well. And if you guys want to support the podcast, you can buy us a coffee on the link down in the description, or just share this with other people. If you think that this is a valuable idea, if you've appreciated this kind of honest and deep discussion, then please go ahead and share it, because these are the sort of discussions that we want to have more of and we want to see more of. So if that's something that you'd like as well, then please share this with anyone you love to have deep discussions with. And
what is the quote for next week? So
the quote for next week is from our Lord and Savior Winnie the Pooh. And it goes as follows: if the person you're talking to doesn't appear to be listening, be patient. It may simply be that they have a small piece of fluff in their ear.
That's good.
Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.
See you next week.